what you're going to see in terms of the problem of evil philosophically is the critique, right? The problem itself, and then the responses from the theists. And these are called theodicies. And these are stories that make God's attributes consistent with the existence of evil, right? And so some of these theodicies involve things like, well, God chose to give us free will, right? And so God cannot both will us to be free and intervene in our expression of our free will. Now, this would explain moral evils, right? Does this explain natural evils, though? Right? Did God have to give the universe free will to kill us with with tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes and asteroids, right? So why do we still experience natural evils, right? So some theodicies don't explain all types of evils, right? But the idea is that they're trying to explain how this type of God could allow evil, and so much evil, right, to occur. So unfortunately, when you do some of the readings, you'll notice that a lot of the examples involve children, right? And this is a rhetorical move because most of us, for some reason, are a lot more comfortable with adults experiencing pain than children experiencing pain, right? We see children as innocent, right? Nothing they could do could ever be worthy, right? And so a lot of these examples are going to use children or animals suffering because they're trying to capture this notion of unnecessary, right? Excessive, right? What possible good could this do? And they could be really innocuous examples too, right? So one of the most famous ones of the, not the logical problem of evil, but the inductive problem of evil comes from Rowe. And he uses just the example of, a forest fire. Surely some animals get caught in the fire, right, and can't escape. So a deer, imagine a deer, little Bambi, gets burned to death, right? That's horrible. No one knows that deer burned to death, right? There's no save the deer movement that that happens on, from social media because of the suffering of this deer, right? It seems completely unnecessary, and so it seems very likely, and in fact, very possible, right, that this type of suffering occurs, and probably all the time, right? And so why would this type of God allow this? And so then there are other types of theodicies. Then we get into this idea that you can't really have goodness without a conception of evil, that perhaps these notions exist in connection, they're interconnected in some way, right? And so these are known as the soul-making theodicies, right? That in order to become worthy of eternal goodness, we have to face the challenge in order to make the decision, right? If God created a world that was already perfect and that we didn't have to face, tough decisions or face evils and overcome them, then we wouldn't be worthy of heaven, right? And so the idea is that we have to build our souls up to be worthy of eternal paradise, and we can only do that through confronting evil. So that's the next type of theodicy. The final type of theodicy is known as the best of all possible worlds. And if any of you are literary fans, this notion is mocked in a very famous book called Candide that was written by Voltaire. So he is actually making fun of the philosopher who argues for this theodicy. And the theodicy goes that, of all possible worlds that God could have created, right, the kind of God that we're talking about would only create the best of all possible worlds, right? And this is the world that was actually created. So this must be the best of all possible worlds. And there's some ways in which we can strengthen that by adding the notion of free will, by kind of blending all three theodicies together, right? We could say a world that has free will and some evil is better than a world that has no evil but no free will, right? Is another way of sort of phrasing it, right? That this was the better world for God to create, one in which, yes, there was evil, but we had free will in it, right? And so that's another way of viewing this. But if you're interested in a critique of this theodicy, I recommend you read Candide. It's very short and very funny. But basically, it's this young man who it's like a epic battle version of Meet the Parents. Do you guys remember that movie with Ben Stiller? It's just like really uncomfortable. Like all the worst things that could happen to him while he's trying to make a good impression on his in-laws, like those are the things that happen, right? It's the same thing with Candide. This guy is trying to get, the woman he's in love with back, and all the worst possible things that happen to him could happen. But he keeps bumping into this philosopher who says, but this is the best of all possible worlds. Right? No matter how much we suffer. So it's interesting, but there are potential responses to the problem.